Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. Today, I want to talk about burnout, mostly in founders and creators, although this could apply to anybody who's experiencing burnout. It has been a very difficult year for many people. We have been through a pandemic, there's job upheaval, there's work upheaval, and so burnout is a very prevalent thing that I'm seeing more and more frequently. And this has me a little bit concerned. And so I thought today we could talk some about what the signs are for burnout, how you can come back and bounce back from burnout, and how you can keep from falling into that trap again and again as a creator or as a founder. Now, I work with all different types of founders and creators and entrepreneurs from really all over the world. And one thing that is super common that I tend to see is when we start experiencing some level of burnout, we don't consciously understand that it's happening and we try and overcompensate. And there's many different ways that we might overcompensate. We might overcompensate by drinking more coffee. We might overcompensate by trying to wake up earlier. We might try to overcompensate by, listening to more intense music. And all of these things on their own are okay, but if we're heading towards a burned out state, it can be somewhat of a problem. Now, burnout affects everybody differently, but it affects us all the same way in the sense that it keeps us from being able to continue with the marathon that is building a business or showing up for work or creating your project. All of us want to have this long-term mindset, but burnout can turn into some really negative aspects of your life. It can make you sick, and I've seen that plenty of times, and also with myself. I had a period of burnout while building my first company, and I actually got shingles, which is something that I was sick with for about a month. It was not great. And I've seen that many times. People get sick because of this burnout. People, they disconnect with their friends and family. And so sometimes when people are being burnt out or feeling burnout, they will not show up to things or they won't be present, and it can hurt our relationships. And of course, when we're burnt out, we might also fall into some bad habits. We might not exercise as much. We might eat poorly. So there's a lot of negative things that can happen with burnout, not to mention just feeling burnt out, which is feeling tired. So how do you know if you're actually burnt out? How do you understand, am I really burnt out, or is it just me having an off week? And here's the simple thing that I would say if you're looking to understand and answer that question for yourself. Burnout is what happens when your recovery time no longer functions properly. And so if you can't recover quickly, how fast you bounce back is really the gauge to look at when it comes to burnout. So if you're finding that each time you go through an intense work session, you're slower and slower at recovering, you might be heading towards a burned out state. So to me, burnout and recovery, they're sort of intertwined in a certain sense, because when your recovery is off, that's what's happening. Your body's saying, I can't recover as quickly. I need more time than I used to need to get back to feeling great, to get back to being energized. So burnout is really about a lack of recovery. And this lack of recovery is the thing that is screaming for your attention. And ultimately, we might hit that place where we can really say to ourselves, wow, I think I'm burned out now. I think that I can't recover. I'm finding myself getting really tired at the end of the workday. And that rolls over to tomorrow, even after sleep, even after all those things that used to bounce me back, I'm still feeling the same. So let's say you've asked yourself that question and you've recovered, or you've noticed that the recovery of your burnout is not the way that it should be. You should be bouncing back faster. You remember how you used to bounce back faster. What can you do about it? Now, there's two things that I think were useful in me experiencing burnout and recovering, two things that I see that are helpful with other people, and I want to share those both with you today. The first is communicate about it. Be honest about it. Tell other people. It is so natural when you're burnt out to feel isolated and feel a little bit vulnerable, and you want to sort of cover it up. You want to tell people that everything's great, or you don't really want to speak up about it, and you kind of want to hide how you're actually feeling. Maybe you're the leader of a team or an organization. You feel like you have to put on this face of, I'm somebody who has it all together. And that's just not going to be helpful in this phase. It really is helpful to communicate for a few reasons. The first is to let the people know around you where you're at so that they can work with you, so that they can adjust, so that they understand, hey, the reason this person's feeling off is maybe because they're feeling burnout. They are more than likely going to say something like, I've been burnt out before as well, or I'm feeling burnout too. I totally get it. I think you'd be surprised how open other people will be when you bring it up and share. The second benefit of sharing and communicating and being honest and being vulnerable and being open with the people in your network or the people that you trust is that it also helps you accept where you're actually at. It also helps you accept and say, yeah, I've told other people, now I can admit it to myself, I'm feeling burnt out. So that's the first tip. Communicate, be honest, don't hide it. Don't hide this from other people. Share it with people you trust, the people, ideally on your team, so that they can understand as well and just know where you're at. That will prove to yourself as well, it's time to look into this and make a change. The second thing that I recommend that people do is to clear up as much space as possible on your calendar and don't fill it with anything. And this is actually something a mentor of mine had suggested to me when I was in a really sort of burnt out space. He said, take the next week, just clear as much of your schedule as possible. All of those things that you think maybe aren't optional. Maybe you have a weekly meeting, like a Toastmasters group that you go to, and it's really optional, but you sort of feel like, oh, I should always be going, it's mandatory. Or maybe you have plans with a friend that could be canceled. Or maybe you have just anything in your schedule that can be removed just for 1 week. Just delay everything at least 1 week. Give yourself some new space, some new time, because that's what your body needs. If recovery is the thing that's broken in this burnout phase, you need to gain that recovery back. You need to start giving your body some of that space so that it can get back on top of and back on track of being able to repair when necessary. This is going to give you the space you need to repair your recovery so that you can get back to working how you were before. Now, once I gave myself that space, it was so interesting because very quickly I started to feel some energy again. So just by having maybe 2 days even of some open space, some open windows where I said to myself, I'm not going to fill this with anything. I don't have to do anything during this time. It's really easy for us to feel like there should be something happening during that time period. And at this stage, if you're trying to recover, just hold off from that impulse, let it be open space, and just tell yourself, just for now, just for this week, just for this next few days, I'm going to let that be open. I'm not going to fill it with anything. And like I said, the thing that was so interesting to me was as soon as my calendar was cleared, as soon as I had some of this open space, I found the energy was coming back. I found myself wanting to do things again. I found myself getting excited about certain areas of work again. And that was a signal to me to let me know, hey, this is actually working. That energy is rebounding. The repairing process is working. And my last tip is, just because you start to feel it a little bit early on, don't give yourself, don't jump back in too quickly to working. Give yourself a little bit more space because that newfound energy, that's a signal that this is working and that you should keep going. So if you can do this for a few days, if you can do this for a week, just remove all of the optional things off your calendar. Maybe you tell yourself, I have to clean the closet this weekend. I need to vacuum the house. Just let it go for 1 week. Just let it go so that you have the space to repair your recovery. Anyways, I hope that is helpful in discussing some experiences that I see other people going through and some ways that I believe can be helpful to you. It's worked for me. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, of course, you can ask them here in the comment section. And with that, I'll be back again very soon. Later.